In many ways, the work of a critic is easy. We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and themselves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to read. But the bitter truth we critics must face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designating it so.
Hello, nuts and nerds, and welcome back to A Squirrel Plays. Today we're going to be talking about reviews and this mess we call social media. Why? Well, I've been doing a lot of reviews lately, and it kind of got me thinking. I wanted to explain how and why I do things the way I do so I can hopefully shed a little light on the behind the scenes and maybe even tickle your brain a little if I'm lucky. Some of you might find this interesting, and some of you might be wondering why you even clicked on this video. Or maybe you fell asleep and I'm on autoplay. Who can say? Though if that's the case, maybe this transition will wake you up. It's really easy to look at a project and criticize and determine how you would have done it better after it's finished, and I don't just mean ttrpgs. The same is also true for video games, books, movies, TV shows, entire business operations, and yes, even a home-cooked meal. When somebody has already gone through all the work to make that thing, as in they started with absolutely nothing and then created something, it's incredibly easy for somebody like me to come along and start pointing out flaws. For example, Jorben has been working on his own ttrpg. I jumped in for a small little playtest, had a good time, then made a couple suggestions that completely altered the course of his design and made him much happier. Just a little, humble brag right there. But does that make me an expert? No. I just happened to swing by and point something out. It was easy for me to see because I was on the outside and seeing it for the first time, whereas he had his face buried in that project for days on end. It's so easy, in fact, that several people have made YouTube channels doing just that, and I'm sure about all of us have watched at least one or two such videos. And while a second set of eyes on something is extremely valuable, being nothing but a second set of eyes is a dangerous way to go. It's dangerous because it's frighteningly easy to convince the average individual that your intelligence stat is higher than it really is simply by pointing out the flaws in something. Whether the intention to fool someone or not is there, it doesn't change the fact that the average person tends to want to believe what the other person is telling them because we're told that questioning and doubting someone is rude and offensive. And we just can't have that, can we? Pointing out mistakes is not only easy, but it is fun, which is why I encourage you whenever you're watching such videos is to ask yourself the question, what am I getting out of this? Are you just listening to a guy make fun of something? Is he just pointing out flaws, or is he actually teaching you something? Is it merely entertainment for your lunch break, or are you absorbing something beneficial? The other thing that makes this dangerous is that the more you fool your audience into thinking you're intelligent, the more you start to believe it yourself. If you surround yourself with positive comments about how bright and wonderful you are, you just might start to believe it.
Blizzard. Game industry for Blizzard Entertainment. Blizzard. Yeah, no, I worked at Blizzard back when I used to work at Blizzard.
And while there is certainly something to be said about positive reinforcement, keeping good company, and not dwelling on negativity and bad comments, there's that little thing known as everything in moderation. Challenges, differing opinions, and discussions are how we grow. And if we go about ignoring and deleting anything and everything that even remotely challenges us because we deem it negative and unhealthy, we are depriving ourselves of personal growth. Without those challenges, the only thing that grows is our ego. I am going to use the critical drinker for a minute here because one, he's probably used to this at this point, but also mostly because of his channel size, because that means I have a higher chance of you all knowing who I'm talking about. In brief, he mocks just about any piece of media that lacks overly muscular and shirtless men in it without adding much else to the conversation. Looking at the size of his channel, the fact that he's written his own books as well, the amount of content he's pumping out, and the confidence of his claims, as well as the positive reception, one would be inclined to believe he knows what he's talking about, right? He seems to know what makes movies and storytelling suck, but does he really? Did you know that he made a movie of his own? Well, as it turns out, it was a bit of a flop and pretty terrible. And before you throw out the review bombing argument, because he does make a lot of people mad, remember he also has millions of fans supporting him too. And this isn't to pick on him specifically. This kind of thing happens constantly. Somebody starts off criticizing other people's work, they get some positive feedback, they get that sweet, juicy dopamine hit, and with each hit the ego grows a little more, then they think they can make the thing they've been criticizing, only to find a heap of troubles, problems, difficulty, and ultimately a lack of success. Now, does that mean if you can't do the work yourself, you're not allowed to criticize or critique? I am going to very begrudgingly say no, but there are certainly times that it would help tremendously. My point here is that it is very easy to criticize and slide your way into a position that's above your pay grade and get entirely too big for your britches. And if you're thinking, wait just a minute, Scrat, you're on YouTube reviewing TTRPGs and talking about storytelling things too. Well, that brings me to the other part, which is as far as TTRPGs go, I try to do them a very certain way, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm always successful. Instead of telling you whether or not it's a good game, I instead tell you about the author themselves, the actual book, what's inside the book, and what you can expect to find, and then whether or not I personally enjoyed it. And it's probably worth noting that the section where I talk about my personal enjoyment of it is not only the shortest section of the video, but also at the end of the video where the least amount of people watch. Fathom, for example. I did not enjoy playing that game. Did that make it a bad game? For me, yes, it did. For you, that's up for you to determine. I could preach all day long about why I think Disney Star Wars is just awful, but there are people out there that enjoy it. Granted, while there is an argument to be made about how some things can just be objectively bad, as well as teaching others to appreciate and demand better storytelling, it is a whole other discussion I can't fit into this video. But for this discussion, Fathom's structure made it a game that I did not enjoy, but because I know I have some crunch lovers watching this channel, I did a review for it in the method I just mentioned. About the authors, the book, the setting, how the game actually played, and then whether or not I enjoyed it. Reviews aren't about me, and while I do make them to try and give exposure to the games and authors, at the end of the day, the reviews are for you. And me saying something sucks with no real explanation doesn't really do you any good.
Liking and subscribing would do me some good. Hey-ho!
If you're a frequent watcher of the channel, I'll eventually become a metric over time as you get more acquainted with my likes and dislikes that you can use to gauge a product with. But ideally, a review is useful whether you're a first-time viewer or a long-time viewer. Now, when it comes to storytelling stuff, you can take things that you consider poorly done and try to make something positive out of them. For example, I'd like to do a video on The Mandalorian and how I think it dropped the ball portraying Mandalorians as skilled warriors and how I think that could have been done better. To do that, yes, I do have to point out what I see as poor decisions in the writing. Again, I think Disney Star Wars is just straight up bad. But if I just leave it at that, I've contributed nothing, or at least a negligible amount. But if I can offer up some solutions on how to make it better or more interesting, then I've contributed something. I have, hopefully, sparked some discussion. I've gotten you to consider some alternatives. Disney isn't going to listen to anything I say, but you might see something there in a story of your own that you're working on and get some ideas, and with any luck, retool and end up with something better than what you started with. On top of that, I try to put my money where my mouth is. I have a book out that you can buy and see for yourself if I'm any good, and there are more in the very slow works. And honestly, now that I'm saying that out loud, I should probably have something out there for free other than the initial book sample that you can consume and make a judgment on. But on the note of free, when I was encouraging others to share their homemade TTRPGs with everyone, I started sharing my own game of nuts around to put myself in the line of fire with everyone else. It is still out there for y'all to grab and enjoy or make fun of, and if all goes according to plan, it will be forever. I've also been sharing my moss and stone design journey too, and I'm doing all of that because the last thing I want to be is one of the many YouTubers that talk a big game and constantly critique the work of others while not making anything of value myself. Granted, there is a lot more money to be made in simply making fun of other people's work, and Anton Ego said it best.
We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to read.
Just like that bit I said about the critical drinker liking muscular topless men. Was it necessary? Of course not, but it was fun to write that way. While good critiques are indeed useful, they're extremely hard to find and very easy to fake. Alright, so I've rambled on a bit long here, but there's one more thing before we go. There's a quote I'd like to share with y'all. Everybody has an opinion, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, a world without opinions would be quite dull if you think about it. The problem is, over time, an opinion will find itself unsatisfied and longing to be knowledge instead. In a world of social media where we get to cut, trim, edit, and rework our words before posting them for all the world to see, it's rather easy to not only disguise but mistake said opinions as knowledge, even when we're the ones speaking them. I don't like this thing becomes this thing is not good. And rarely do we question it. And if you're wondering who said that, it was me, just now. I made it up. Is it true? Is it a bunch of hoopla? That's up for you to decide, which is kind of what this whole thing has been about. Discuss in the comments, not just because it's a good way to boost my video in the algorithm, but because that's how we grow. We grow through discussion. We grow through challenge and adversity. When you hear somebody say, this thing is not good, don't just run with it and accept it. You don't have to be the devil's advocate, but I do encourage you to question it, challenge it, ask why. As a matter of fact, I think one of the best things we can do in life is ask why. Where's my outro at? Don't you mean why isn't my outro here? Ha 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 ha!